2023 marks the 30th anniversary of the Oregon Department of Consumer and Business Services, the state's largest consumer protection and business regulatory agency. Often referred to as DCBS, the department administers state laws and rules to protect workers and consumers in the areas of workers' compensation, occupational safety and health, building codes, insurance, and financial services.
My job is the best job in state government. It is a very meaningful job. It results in substantial, tangible benefits. It gets workers back to work who are so desperately injured on the job that they couldn't do their regular work anymore. They had lost their jobs typically. It used to be when I started that if you weren't 100%, your employer didn't want you back. And so you were out looking for a job now with a great disability. Our program, the Preferred Worker Program, has turned that on its head. We've reversed that by providing incentives to employers to overcome exactly those things, address exactly their worries, and overcome the resources that lacked for getting an injured worker back to work.
The department is currently made up of the Building Codes Division, Division of Financial Regulation, Oregon OSHA, the Workers' Compensation Division, the Workers' Compensation Board, 2 ombuds offices, and shared services. The functions of the department date back to 1887 when the Secretary of State was given ex officio powers as the insurance commissioner. Over the years, many of the current department's functions were renamed, changed structure, and moved locations. In 1987, the Department of Insurance and Finance took on many roles of the Department of Commerce.
What we needed to do was change the structure and merge all these commissioners into one entity, and we chose the insurance commissioners to be the focal point. And the department was created was called the Department of Insurance and Finance. Eventually morphed into DCBS was that the consumer. That's what this is all. That's why the regulations are there, is to protect the consumer.
In 1987, when we were making DIF, and Governor Goldsmith's one of his principal focuses was on that challenge, we had the Department of Commerce, which was at that time more of a licensing oversight agency for banking and securities and so on. And we had an insurance office, and we had a separate Department of Workers' Comp, which included OSHA. And the legislation in 1987 abolished the Department of Commerce and brought Department of Workers' Comp, OSHA, the Insurance Division, the Banking and Securities, all together to create what was then DIF. Again, with the idea that you could manage insurance costs, particularly in workers' comp, better if you had control over why those costs in insurance went up.
In August 1993, the Department of Insurance and Finance, also known as DIF, was disbanded and DCBS was created to serve as an integrated umbrella agency over most state functions affecting businesses. Several agencies and boards were rolled into DCBS. The largest of these was the Department of Insurance and Finance, which contained the Division of Finance and Corporate Securities, the Insurance Division, Oregon OSHA, the Workers' Compensation Division, and the Workers' Compensation Board. Another entity placed into DCBS at the time was the Building Codes Agency, now known as the Building Codes Division. The roots of creating DCBS went back to 1991, when then Governor Barbara Roberts created a task force to look for more efficient ways to deliver state government services and clearer lines of accountability.
The task force will take a look at government structure, and it will ask some tough questions. Are all of these government agencies necessary? Can we eliminate or restructure the program or the service? Could we merge programs to streamline our agencies? Could we eliminate a board or a commission?
Governor Roberts asked DIF Director Gary Weeks and Deputy Director Jeff Guilfoy to create a reorganization team, which reviewed 32 agencies with related functions and recommended which one should join the newly designed DCBS.
The transition was pretty smooth because DCBS was a change in the name of DIF, but the responsibilities didn't change at all, really. I mean, we still had all the responsibilities that were DIF, were in DCBS. And when I was appointed the director, having been the deputy director of DIF, I had certain ideas about how the department should behave and what we should represent and so on. And I thought it was far more than just a department of insurance and finance. It was a department of really services.
So the best part of working at DCBS is always the mission. With Oregon OSHA, our mission is hoping to ensure that everyone goes home at night with the same number of body parts they went to work with. And that has not changed, even predating the Oregon Safe Employment Act. We have always been essentially that final line in the sand for a lot of employees who had no one else to turn to.
Senate Bill 167, which ultimately established DCBS, was trimmed, bounced, battered, and left for dead, according to Weeks. On August 4th, 1993, DIF management went home thinking all of their reorganization work was for naught. But 11th-hour maneuvers by the governor and her staff revived the measure, and sometime between 1:30 and 2 a.m. on August 5, 1993, the upper chamber passed Senate Bill 167 by a vote of 27-3, and DCBS was born. Currently, DCBS employs more than 900 employees from various backgrounds and fields, from economists to consumer advocates, administrative assistants to inspectors. DCBS employees strive to provide the highest quality service to Oregon consumers, workers, and businesses.
It's always about the consumer. And I think that's what I like about DCBS, and the pivot that they took from DIF is that they focused on the consumer as the primary purpose of the agency. It's to protect the workplace safety.
What I'm most proud of at DCBS, the reason that we're here. You know, when you hear regulatory, people tend to think negatively, but when you explain what DCBS does, all the things that we're involved in, whether it be in the banking institution, whether it be in insurance, whether it be in building codes, or workers' comp, it's all about the people of Oregon and helping them, protecting them. What we stand for and what we do is I think, something to be very proud of here.
It's hard to say what I'm proudest of because we did a lot. This agency really accomplished a great deal. I would say we really made sure the agency focused on protecting Oregon in their consumer needs. So we had always been very strong, I think, in working with businesses and making sure that we were appropriate with our regulatory structures. We had done a great job in worker protection, but we hadn't really focused as heavily on consumer protection. And in the financial sector and the insurance sector, we added that onto our other accomplishments in a way that I think we had not been able to do before.
When I first started as a compliance officer, we had a Wang terminal and a typewriter. There were 2 Windows PCs in the office. And we went by a progression of doing mostly hard copy for things to now almost everything is computer generated. Even after I moved to the technical section, most of the communication we had with our stakeholders and external folks was by telephone or written letter. So we would get people requesting interpretations on various rules or various issues with a letter, and then we would send a letter response. Transition to now, that's all done by email.
The biggest change that I've seen over the years has been in communication and how we get things done. We've worked pretty siloed to begin with within the different sections within the division. And over time, we've learned that we can be more effective if we all pull together and put teams together based on skill set.
There have been a lot of great things that we've been able to do together, from resolving long-standing third-party building official issues to passing nation-leading wildfire smoke and heat illness prevention rules, to responding to the COVID pandemic, both as a regulator and as an employer, including the financial crisis that came up during the COVID pandemic. We've implemented great new programs like the Oregon Reinsurance Program, a drug price transparency program. Workers' comp modernization is going to fundamentally change how that division performs all the great duties that it does. And all the time, we've done this by leading the state enterprise in operational excellence, consistently being at the top of the list across a whole series of operational measures.
When I began, Oregon was at the very top of the cost in the United States for workers' comp insurance. It was a very bad business place to do business because of the cost of workers' comp. Today, we are at the bottom 10 states in the nation for the cost of workers' comp. We've saved a great deal and created a very business positive environment in Oregon.
I'd say I will not be surprised in any way if we continue to grow. And not in leaps and bounds, but in small ways that add up over time. And I think there's a really big, important reason for that. And it's that this agency and all of our teams and all of our people do what they do really well. And that gets noticed by everyone, by our partners and stakeholders, by legislators and others. So that when new ideas, when new programs are being invented, and they're looking for a place for those programs, they tend to not look a lot further than DCBS. And one thing I'd say that I'm not expecting to change is not only how well we do our job, but what a great place DCBS is to work. And that's, of course, driven not only by this great shared mission that we have across all of our divisions, but by the excellent people that work here and their dedication to that mission, which makes this a great place to work and to be. And I don't see that changing in any way.
I've stayed so long with DCBS because it feels like home. It feels it's welcoming. I really enjoy getting up every day and coming here and just doing the work that we do. We make a difference.
I was actually pretty pleased to see that the agency is still committed to protecting consumers and workers while promoting a positive business climate.
As we look to the future, we don't know what is next for DCBS. But what we do know is that undoubtedly, the dedicated professionals of DCBS will continue to serve the people of Oregon with honesty, integrity, and dependability.